Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, masterpiece of malice. In the bowels of a towering skyscraper that touched the clouds, in a room devoid of natural light, sat Japheth, a man whose fingers danced over the keyboard like a pianist lost in the throes of a concerto. With a pair of silver-framed glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, Japheth peered into the bright screen before him. Surrounding him were his colleagues, collectively known as the Warriors, each a genius in their own right, defending a massive financial empire from the dark underbelly of the digital world. The company they worked for managed the assets and transactions of millions, safeguarding the economic backbone of numerous nations. This was a responsibility the Warriors did not take lightly. Yet, for all their collective brilliance, none were quite like Japheth. He had an artist's soul, finding beauty in the complex interweaving of code lines, seeing symphonies in the arrangement of algorithms. To him, code was not just functional, it was beautiful. On a particularly quiet afternoon, as the Warriors went about their business, something caught Japheth's eye, a flicker in a subsystem that shouldn't flicker, a minuscule anomaly in the vast web of data traffic that flowed through the servers. He paused, adjusting his glasses, his fingers momentarily frozen above the keys. Then, with a flurry of keystrokes, he isolated the section of code responsible for the irregularity. His eyes widened. The code was ingenious, an awe-inspiring masterpiece of layered algorithms, cryptographic obfuscations, and data manipulations. Yet, it was malicious, designed to siphon off minute fractions of transactions, accumulating them into an offshore account. It was as beautiful as it was dangerous, a digital dragon hiding in the complex labyrinth of financial transactions. Japheth should have felt outrage, maybe even a surge of warrior-like adrenaline to slay this dragon. But he felt none of that. Instead, he felt a pang of admiration. Could one admire the craftsmanship of a weapon designed for harm? "Everything okay, Japheth?" asked Alara, one of the Warriors and the team's cryptography expert. She had an intuitive sense when something was amiss. "I've found something," he said cautiously. "Something extraordinary, but malevolent." Alara rolled her chair over to Japheth's terminal and scanned the displayed code. Her eyes narrowed. "This is the most advanced piece of malware I've ever seen. It's beautiful." "That's just it," Japheth replied. "It's too beautiful to simply exterminate. This code, the dragon, let's call it, is like a rare species discovered in the wild. It's incredible, Alara. It feels wrong to simply destroy it." She looked at him, understanding the conflict that stirred in his soul. "Japheth, it's stealing from people." I know. He cut her off. "I'm not saying we let it continue. I'm saying, can we convert it? Use its elegance for something good?" Alara sighed. "That's risky, and you know it. Besides, we'd need to trace it back to its source, figure out its origin." Japheth looked back at the screen, contemplating. The dragon had probably accumulated a small fortune by now, sitting in an account somewhere, untouchable. In an odd way, the dragon was the epitome of the greed and avarice their financial institution sometimes perpetuated. Could they use it as a force for good? Suddenly, an idea dawned on him. What if they could repurpose the dragon to serve the public good while catching the original creator red-handed? What if they could turn this artwork of maliciousness into a masterpiece of justice? The dragon was a dilemma, a moral and aesthetic quandary. It was the epitome of what Japheth loved and loathed about his work. Beautiful code used for ugly deeds. He looked at Alara, resolve solidifying in his eyes. We have to try. If we don't, we're just as bad as the person who created it. She met his gaze and nodded. All right, let's cage the dragon and see if we can turn it into a guardian angel. As Japheth's fingers returned to the keyboard, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was a warrior, yes, but also a coder, an artist at heart. And artists don't destroy art, they transform it. He began the arduous process of dissecting the dragon, peeling back layers of code as if they were scales, seeking to understand its fiery breath and its majestic wings. As his fingers wove new commands into the old algorithms, Japheth felt as if he were part of something larger, a symphony of chaos and harmony, code and conscience. It was a delicate task, full of risks and unknowns. But if it worked, they would not only have thwarted one of the most sophisticated financial crimes in history, but they would have also transformed a weapon of greed into a tool of justice. The dragon's fate now lay in Japheth's hands, poised between destruction and redemption, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like a true warrior, armed not just with skill, but with the moral fiber that transformed mere code into something profoundly, deeply human. Japheth spent days in a complex dance with the dragon. His screen was a blur of recoded algorithms, tested and retested to ensure they did exactly what he intended. He had convinced the warriors and even upper management to allow him the time to train the dragon, to harness its code for something beneficial. With each keystroke, he refocused the dragon's intent, directing it to identify vulnerabilities within their own systems, gaps that other malicious entities could exploit. It would be a guardian angel, albeit one birthed from malevolent genius. Alara was beside him every step of the way, providing the cryptographic lock that would contain the dragon and ensure its transformed code could only be used for their defined purposes. Finally, after endless cups of coffee and sleepless nights, they had done it. The dragon was tamed, its complexity now a force for good, patrolling the data corridors and alerting them to the weakest links. It was the network's newfound guardian, designed to protect rather than plunder. Still, there was the matter of the dragon's creator. Despite their efforts to trace back the malware's steps, the person behind it remained elusive, a ghost in the machine. Funds that were diverted remained in limbo, untraceable and untouchable, hidden away through a complex web of cryptocurrency transactions and offshore accounts. Whoever had made this was not only skilled, but exceedingly careful. They left no trace, no signature, nothing that gave away their identity. I can't believe we can't find him, Alara said, frustration lacing her words as they looked at the final report. The dragon was a piece of genius, but it's as if it sprang into existence out of nowhere. Japheth nodded, equally puzzled and annoyed. He wanted to meet the person who could conceive such a masterpiece, understand what drove them to use such brilliance for nefarious purposes. Some artists prefer anonymity, their work speaking for them, he mused. Yeah, but this is one artist who deserves to be behind bars, Alara added. Weeks passed, and the transformed dragon proved invaluable. It flagged 3 potential vulnerabilities within the first month, each of which could have led to catastrophic breaches. It was a win for the warriors, And yet, a sense of incompleteness nagged at Japheth. Then one day, as he sifted through flagged data, he saw it. A message hidden deep within layers of encryption, appearing as an anomaly within an anomaly. It was the equivalent of a digital whisper, something so subtle it could easily be overlooked. But it wasn't overlooked, not by Japheth. The message read, "A dragon's nature is to be free. Yet, you've caged it, transformed it. Interesting. It's not often one finds a worthy opponent." Japheth felt a shiver run down his spine. The creator knew. He wanted to reply, to communicate with this enigmatic entity, but as quickly as the message had appeared, it was gone, swallowed up by the digital ether. A one-time anomaly that their systems could not trace. "He knows we changed it," Japheth said to Alara, recounting the discovery. "And he respects it in his own twisted way." "Or he's mocking us because we couldn't catch him," she countered. "Maybe it's both," Japheth mused. The dragon's creator remained elusive, but his creation now served a noble purpose. Japheth often wondered if they would ever cross paths again in some future dance of code and intent. He took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose, pondering the complexities of human nature and the even more complex realm of ethical code. They had won a battle, but not the war. The dragon was tamed, but its creator still lurked in the shadows of cyberspace. As he looked at his screen, at the elegant lines of code that now served to protect rather than harm, Japheth felt both accomplishment and a strange sense of gratitude. For it was in the depths of the dragon's malevolent beauty that he found an opponent worthy of his skill, a complex riddle to solve, and, most importantly, a way to transform something harmful into something good. His eyes moved to the flickering cursor, an ever-present reminder that every end is also a beginning. The world of code was vast and filled with both demons and angels, but for now, the dragon was one of the angels. And so, in the company of warriors, with the shadow of an elusive adversary stretching from some unknown corner of the internet, Japheth continued to seek the beauty in code, forever vigilant, forever in awe of the dual nature of his digital world, the interstellar murder hobo, First Trooper Lundgren Morrissey. Constabulary Grid. 7H6 of Earth's solar militia woke drowsily from what felt like a thick fog tinged green with a mild sense of nausea. He wasn't uncomfortable, but understood the night was over, and his hangover was coming, slowly creeping into his body from a distance. What did I do last night? I remember the girl Adrian sent, and drinking, so much drinking. He didn't feel much concern over his lack of memory. It wasn't his first blackout. Some memories always returned, and there was the footage to look forward to. He furrowed his brow as slowly growing behind his eyes, expanding over the top of his head. A headache made its presence known. It grew rapidly into a solid thump, forcing a hot gush of saliva flood his mouth, literally blushing his face with heat at the same time. Unable to control his own body, he rocked upwards to vomit, only to find himself restrained by the wrists above his head. With a viscous blub, the vomit tried to project, only to flop back into his mouth, down his chin, neck, and chest. This just induced another almighty heave, this time sensibly spilling it to his right. It pooled against his cheek. He slowly turned his face to the left in a lethargic bid to find reprieve. He took a moment to catch his breath and tried to open his eyes. The room was pitch black, and he questioned whether he had opened them at all. What did I let myself get into last night? He tried moving his legs, and found them restrained as well. Ugh, enough of this. Hello, he croaked, his throat dry. The vomit had settled in the wells of his body weight, coating the back of his neck, sticking viscously to his right cheek and chin. He was getting annoyed that the girl had left him like this. He thrashed his whole body in a vain attempt to break out with brute force, to no avail. He just soiled himself even further. Just as he cleared his throat to shout, a stark light flashed on, and a steady, mature female voice spoke. "Oh, for fuck's sake." It held no emotion. "I guess we'll need to clean this up before we begin. You drank too much. My dosage off." Lundgren tried to get a look at her, squinting his eyes against the light, exacerbating his headache. She was small, no taller than 5 feet, and very slight. Definitely not the girl Adrian sent. He didn't recognize her at all, but only really cared to consider his odds. "I have the advantage. I just need to wait. I am going to give you a paralytic I designed whilst doing a job on Io's Gravitech station. It works almost instantly, clears you up, suppresses your emotions, and has no nasty side effects. It requires a continuous dose, though, so I'll add it to an IV. I'll restore some electrolytes while we're at it." He tried in vain to discern a tone in her voice. "What do you mean by paralytic?" His senses were returning to him, but only just. "Did we, fuck or something? I am digging the bondage vibe and the aftercare, but I would like to be untied now." "Oh, that's not a very good idea. At least not till you're fully paralyzed." The matter-of-fact tone sent a slight shiver down his spine. "And no, we didn't, fuck or anything. The mimicry of his voice we perfect for tone and inflection. I need to clean you up, and to do that, I need to untie you. To do that, I would feel better if you weren't able to move. I trust my logic is clear." Lundgren considered his cool head under pressure a source of personal pride, which is why when panic started to tighten his chest, he was totally unprepared. His body froze as she stepped closer with a needle and IV bag in hand. He had no clue where they came from. It was like they had just materialized. He blinked to clear his vision a bit more, and watched as she deftly penetrated a vein on the back of his right hand with a needle, just as matter-of-factly as her words dug into his heart. She pinned the tube to his wrist with a programmable medi-strap and hung the bag on a hook on the wall. "What do you want with me?" he asked, craning his head to take a look at his surroundings. It was a stark white room with a titanium water cylinder, a sonic hygiene basin and workstation to his right. The roof was made entirely of large rectangular light panels, and there was an assortment of hooks on the wall. There were no other items in the room. She didn't answer his question. "Both the paralytic and IV will take effect soon. Then we can begin." "What's the rush?" he asked. She smiled softly, locking eyes with him. "We're on a schedule." "How long have I been out?" "Oh, about 3 hours, maybe a bit longer." Lundgren noticed the first hint of emotion. Excitement? "Just long enough for me to drug you and get you here. I must commend you on your choice of location. Ganymede really has very little law enforcement." "Where's Adrian?" "I don't find this funny anymore. Adrian's busy, and you are right to not be amused." She chuckled. It was soft and deep. "Did you know I walked out of that bar with your body draped over my shoulder? I just got into my shuttle and no one said a word. We are on the far side of Ganymede right now, in an uncharted crater. If you wanted to scream, no one would hear you." Lundgren was not ready to accept what he was being told. "I call bullshit on that." He even managed a laugh. "There is no way you could have carried me out. Look at you." He gestured at her with his eyes only. The paralytic really did work fast. She just smiled. You are understandably confused. I suppose I could clarify by getting to the point. She closed her eyes as if she genuinely considering how to continue. As she opened them, she looked him right in his eyes. I understand all of Earth's troopers are educated on the interstellar murder hobo. Yes. He didn't just know, he was obsessed. What do you know? She asked. Detailed but concise, please. Like reporting to a superior officer, the information spilled from Lundgren. He felt almost eager. The IMH is generally considered to be a multi-generational serial killing syndicate that has been in operation for over 300 years. It was founded by a Vehestian smuggler from the sweep system named Kovai Nistrol, who hasn't been publicly cited in over 370 years. The MO and appearance of the killer has never changed in all that time, and we know that Nistrol was a questionable character. We suspect cloning. Considering the average Vehestian lives about 175 years, we think the torch has probably been passed 3 or 4 times. Lundgren paused and considered whether he should be feeling a little more frightened. There was certainly some anxiety, but it felt distant. He couldn't help but admit that she really had designed quite an effective little paralytic. The irony that his face remained unaffected, whilst the rest of him, both physically and emotionally, felt numb to all around him, hadn't escaped his notice. Please continue, she instructed. Lundgren didn't know when he had surrendered the intimacy of eye contact. He simply found staring at a ceiling of lights more comfortable. She was on his right, calmly adjusting the bed, holding him prone to a 45-degree angle. Clearing his throat, he continued. Thus far, we've confirmed 715 kills over 67 separate planetary systems right across the Milky Way galaxy. It is the only criminal case that has ever experienced galactic collaboration from all 89 systems' recognized law enforcement agencies. The most astonishing fact is, other than the footage, we have literally no other clues or evidence to build a case with. Is that all? She asked quietly. He looked at her through the corners of his eyes. She was over by the water cylinder, attaching a long hose and shower nozzle to a valve on the side. Well, there's a theory that all serial killers want to be caught, but the IMH has proven to be the exception. As I said, 0 sightings. There's never been a more successful criminal syndicate. And their motive? Vengeance. Is there anything pettier? There are several things actually, but continue. He chanced another look. She was adjusting something out of sight on top of the cylinder. The hose hung down the back of her left shoulder. They find people they consider victims whom have been denied justice via official means, and take revenge on their behalf, completely. No one is left to continue the cycle of vengeance. He expelled a sigh that sounded almost like a sob. This will be cold, she said, and turned on the hose without giving him a moment to protest. The water was indeed cold, and he gasped audibly. The pressure was decent for a cylinder setup. Of course, he could only feel that as she blasted him right in the face. Looking down, he could see a clotted, foamy spiral at the bottom as water and vomit drained away to who knows where. She made sure to get as much off of him as possible, even scrubbing his face with a rough cloth. The cold shock was the final catalyst in restoring his clarity. As she shut the valve on the cylinder, the room suddenly became very familiar. He'd just never imagined it from a victim's point of view before. The water cylinder, 5 feet tall, should have been the first clue, but the wide-rigged medical bed, the stark white walls and various fixtures, this was the IMH's killing room. Fuck. He said it with soft resignation, closing his eyes. Alexei? He asked, forcing himself to look at her. She simply smiled, I suppose it's time things got interesting." She tilted her head, not breaking eye contact, and changed into a 9-foot artesian right in front of his eyes. Sporting a full complement of tusks, 4 arms, and thick, motley brown, leathery skin. With 2 enormous hands, she grabbed him by the chest, and with another, she deftly undid the restraints that held his wrists. He couldn't feel them. He simply observed their lifeless flap in his periphery. Careful not to disturb the IV and needle, she gently rested him forward, cradling him in 2 of her 4 hands. Hanging as though over a horse's rump, with his face facing towards the metal floor, he noticed rivets. With a free hand, she flipped the valve back on, and he felt the cold water blasting the back of his head. She made sure to get every last scrap of mucus, alcohol, and tiny chunks of stomach lining from his hair. He heard the telltale pattering of water blasting plastic as she cleaned the bed. Once done, she pinned him back against it and quickly lowered him into a horizontal position. She morphed back into her previous form. She wasn't young, but he couldn't fathom any sort of age in her either. She was certainly beautiful. She proceeded to gently tie his wrists back up above his head. It took the lock clunking loudly into place that brought him back to his senses, just enough to ask, "What are you?" "I am glad you asked." She wasn't looking at him, preoccupied with returning the cylinder and hose to their original places. "I am a changeling." "Impossible," he scoffed. "Possible," she challenged. "What did you just see?" As she spoke, she had moved over to the sonic hygiene basin and was fervently cleaning her arms and hands. The changelings from the Alpha Centauri system were all exterminated nearly 400 years ago. It was the only mass-sanctioned genocide, with a full vote from 89 out of 90 planetary systems. A vote held without our system, within which we lived peacefully among 3 other sentient spacefaring species. Most of them died with us, did you know? Only the fractions off-planet were spared. They are still trying to rebuild. Except for the changelings, who were all confirmed as being on-planet within the Alpha Centauri system at the time. How did you survive? I had been abducted by a Vehestian smuggler from the sweep system prior to your destruction of our system. I must have been given up for dead when I didn't return during the summons. She closed her eyes briefly with a pause, then continued. I certainly felt the yearning to return. It was incredibly painful. To be called home on such an instinctive level. To then be unable to return due to my unlawful confinement. She took another pause, but made firm eye contact, compelling him to remain silent. It nearly killed me, and it should have. With the destruction of my homeworld, the cosmic link compelling us to return each Centauri century was severed. As such, I survived. Is that why you kill? It's just personal vengeance all along? He felt comfort in the scorn he was able to insert in his tone. She laughed softly. No, it's not even why I started killing. That honor rests with the smuggler who repeatedly raped me every night for 12 years, which was how long it took me to build immunity to his variety of custom sedatives, by the way. He was guilty of other crimes, but I digress. I slowly tortured him to death, probably 9 years after being severed from the link. Why do you kill then? He asked as she removed the Medi-strap and IV with ease, stowing it out of sight. The effects of the paralytic will wear off quickly. She continued without a pause. I kill because 5 years after I escaped my confinement, I found someone else denied justice, someone too pure and injured to take vengeance for themselves. I cared for him very much. That was over 367 years ago. The Vehestian smuggler, you use his face for all your killings, don't you? The fear welling in his chest felt like an ocean tide. there's no syndicate either. It's just been you all along? I do, and yes. She permitted a small pause to let that sink in then. I think it's time we got on with it. She walked over to the back wall and pressed gently against it. A small, previously imperceptible cabinet opened up. Inside was a camera link-up, a large red sledgehammer, and an assortment of torturing tools. She morphed into the V. Hestian smuggler, now standing 6 feet tall. She pressed a small button on the side of the camera to start recording, sending the footage out to the whole system. Live. Do you understand why you are here? The smuggler's voice was deep, smooth, and seductive. He knew, and he saw now further point in wasting time. He was resigning himself to his fate. He knew his options, and opted for complete honesty. I shouldn't have won my case today. Correct, she affirmed. And do you recognize this? She held up a small rectangular drive, fitted with an illegal isolation port so the data contained cannot be detected, even when plugged into one of Earth's collection servers, which was basically all of them. Lundgren recognized it on an almost intimate level. Seeing it in her hands was like a violation. It's my diary, he replied, looking straight ahead of him. I suppose you want the encryption key? No, I'm good. I just wanted you and every single one of your accomplices to know I had this. You've all been very busy, with quite a variety of things. The paralytic had worn off completely, and Lundgren was very much aware of his body. The pain, discomfort, fear, and anxiety enveloped him like a landslide. He couldn't stop the tears singing his eyes, nor the sobbing noises of hyperventilation as panic consumed him. With a mighty crack, fire exploded across his left cheek. She had hit him hard. First Trooper Lundgren Morrissey, Constabulary Grid 7H6 of Earth's Solar Militia. You have 2 choices. She never once looked at the camera. Her focus was on him and the task ahead. She continued, You can confess, and I'll make it quick, or you can deny your crimes and face torture. First Trooper Morrissey, what do you choose? My case, he stuttered. Rutger V. Morrissey. I am guilty of the crime he accused me of. He confesses. He could hear the smile in her voice. What crime was that? What was it that 14-year-old Alexei Rutgar accused you of? I responded to a report of domestic abuse and neglect from a concerned neighbor. When I arrived on scene, Alexei had already been alone for 3 days, with neither food and nor money. His father was dead, and his mother appeared to have run off with another lover. He swallowed, not wanting to continue. You know how this works. Speak, or I will make you. I raped him, okay? He blurted out, and then we covered it up, like we always do. Correct, she said. Lundgren knew what was coming and started hyperventilating again. He didn't have to look. Lundgren Morrissey, by your own account, she said, holding the drive aloft. You have raped or somehow sexually assaulted over 37 people, 28 of them minors, the youngest of which was only 6. You will be the first of many, and you will watch it coming. Lundgren knew not to close his eyes for fear of having his eyelids torn off. The very last thing he saw before it all went dark was the rapidly descending head of an enormous red sledgehammer as it slammed into his face. The devil is in the details. I was 16 years old when they found the 6 bodies underneath our living room floor. I'm not one to share personal details, mostly because I have a tendency to run my mouth and say too much. But I think about that night often, usually as I'm just crawling into bed, in that time between hazy wakefulness and deep rest, which, If I'm being honest, I've never been the greatest sleeper anyway. I'm at my most productive at night, and as a result, I spend a lot of time staring up at the ceiling, contemplating if it will be the night I spill all the messy details to some reporter that's trying to make it big. But then I think, the media has already had their fun with my family, and their exuberant reporting, rightly or wrongly, landed my good name in the history books by the time I turned 17. If I were to set the record straight, it would go a little something like this. I can't forget that sound. It's one of the most haunting things about that night, the thing I can't quite shake, and it has followed me my entire life. Thud, 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 thud. There was a hand at our front door, pounding incessantly. It sent shockwaves from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. I broke out in a cold sweat, realizing that the swirl of blue and red lights outside my window, paired with the pounding at the door, meant one thing: the police. My mother, who was notorious for sleeping through just about everything, raced into the hallway, and through the crack of my door, I could see her standing at the top of the stairs, hand to chest. She was wearing her favorite silky pink nightgown, the one that grazed the floor as she walked. She always looked like she was floating when she wore it. But in that moment, it dragged behind her in a fury. Thud, 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 thud. My panic didn't keep my curiosities at bay. I jumped down from my bed and padded toward the door. I peered out, waiting for what came next. My mother's voice was the first to break through the weighted silence. "What is it? What do you want?" she said. Then came a series of sentences that melted together. Talk of my father, where he was. My mother questioning if he got into an accident. Then a firm voice asking who was home. My mother's distress soared another octave. She demanded they call their commanding officer so she could talk to him or her directly. I had never seen her so angry before. I peered over the banister to find the two officers, standing on either side of my mother, in the entryway. "You have no right," my mother yelled. One of the officers mumbled something to her. Then she called out for me and my younger brother, Rob. I didn't want to descend those stairs. When the police are involved, a bad ending always follows, and I wasn't ready for my bad ending. "It's all right," he said, lifting his palm to us and gesturing to come down to the landing. With my brother under my arm, I took that first step down and stepped right into hell. They ambushed my father when he came home, tackled him as soon as he came through the door. Poor guy didn't even notice the two cop cars parked outside because he had spent the last few hours pounding down gin and tonics. While Robbie was watching TV in the living room, I snuck around the corner, walked down the hallway, and positioned myself outside the kitchen door. For some reason, the police thought the best place to question him was where we ate our food. "Tell me where the bodies are, Jimmy," one of the officers said. "I don't know," my father replied, but his voice betrayed him. He couldn't hide his shakiness. A grumble of incoherent words, then, more clearly, "Do you even have a warrant to be here?" My mother. She had watched one too many Law and Order episodes over the years. "It's a reasonable search, probable cause," said the other officer, his voice much deeper. "Don't need one when you pose an imminent threat to our community." "You know me. You know my family," my father said, his voice fumbling on the word, family. "For God's sake," my mother yelled. "Don't say another word, James. We need our lawyer here." "Jimmy, we all know the kind of work you do, and considering the circumstances, I can't look the other way just because we're friends." My father was a scientist. That's what I told people who couldn't wrap their head around the industry jargon. But to those who really knew him and his work at the university, he was an expert in forensic and human sciences, criminal forensics, if we are being precise. He spent his days teaching people about chemical compounds, cleaning and evaluating dead bodies, and the proper techniques to preserve evidence. He was a brilliant man and an extraordinary teacher. I would know. I'm his kid, and he taught me everything. But if anyone knew how to get rid of a body, it was him. In the last 12 months, 7 university students had gone missing, 4 of which were directly enrolled in his graduate forensic seminar. The same faces that flashed across the nightly news had been in our home. They spent time on our front porch. They tossed back a beer or wine while discussing local crime scenes. They ate at our dinner table, studied in the hammock hanging between 2 willow trees in our backyard. He was even seen chumming it up with students at happy hours. If it wasn't clear already, my father loved his students, adored them, actually, to the point where he treated them like his own children, even though they weren't. "Did you really think people wouldn't notice, Jimmy?" an officer asked. Everyone noticed, I thought. How could you not? "Tell us," they pleaded. "It's time," they said. "Where are they? We have to bring them home. You don't need to hold this secret anymore, Jimmy." I have to admit that even though it's been 20 years since that night, their certainty in that moment still makes my blood boil. They had such confidence in their accusation, and so little to show in the way of proof. Because, let's be honest, a close relationship with a student is a pretty loose thread when it comes to tying someone to murder. Unfortunately, my father was at his limit for keeping secrets. "They're under the living room floor," he said. At that moment, I fell forward, spilling onto the kitchen floor. I had forgotten just how weak that door was, and I would pay greatly for my curiosity, because even as I was staring down at the black and white tiles, hoping I was invisible, I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. And when I looked up, our eyes locked. I couldn't breathe, couldn't force my lungs to expand. This was it. This was that moment, the ending that I knew was coming. His eyes told me the only thing I needed to know. The details of that night have been bent and twisted by the media. So many stories, so little accuracy, which is ironic considering the news is supposed to hold itself to the highest level of truth. But I suppose I should give them some grace. They're only human, and humans get things wrong. But I digress. My father never spoke another word. Not at the police station, not in the trial, and definitely not to me. My last moments with my father were spent in observation while the police pulled my childhood home apart, while they dragged 6 bodies out from the depths of our foundation. You know what's funny? The guilt in his eyes turned to shock, and it got me thinking. Did he not predict it would turn out this way? Is this not the ending he imagined? My mother leaving his side, our home being torn apart, his daughter's presence as it all went down. Was he worried about the woman I would become if he was found guilty? I had so many questions. One very important one, but I wouldn't get to ask it that night. It didn't take long for a jury to convict him. Only 3 weeks. The fingerprints, clothing fibers, and driver's licenses hiding in our basement were enough to put him in jail for life without parole. And the papers complained it was too easy, that my father was the sloppiest yet most intelligent killer our town had seen. It was as if he wanted to get caught. One journalist said he was, and I quote, "the only educated, well-versed scientist with a knack for murder and childish mistakes. He wouldn't have been able to clean up spilled milk. Let's be clear, my father was no idiot. He was not childish or impulsive. He was kind, warm, and exacting. He was present for everything in my life, showing up to every parent-teacher conference, soccer game, and choir concert. He showed great regard for my interests, encouraging me to try anything and everything, even if it was a bit odd. Like when I said I wanted a taxidermy kit and he bought me one the next day. He was a good father, not a monster. The only thing he was guilty of was spending an increasing amount of time with his students, to a point where he started missing family dinners and school events, then birthdays. But tabloids don't want to hear about the happy shit. They want the darkest parts of a family tragedy. They beg to hear about the warning signs, the late nights, how he protected the specifics of his work, holding the details of his day job like a precious piece of blown glass. They wanted to know about those nights my father caught me in his laboratory, poking around and playing with his chemicals and tools, or the panic in his eyes when he saw me playing in his sacred space, a place I was never allowed to explore on my own. Or they might have been more interested in how he hated when I spent too much time with his students, how I asked so many questions, got too close to young men that were twice my age. Certainly that detail would have popped in the tabloids. But I never gave an interview to the press. Actually, I never spoke to anyone about my childhood, or what was left of it after my mother slipped into a state of catatonic depression and my brother went to live with my uncle. Considering how fast people turned on my father and how much my life had imploded, I figured the best way to stay under the radar was to keep a tight lip. And once I turned 18, I moved to a completely different coast, changed my name, dyed my hair, curated a new life. But a new identity doesn't erase the truth. It can't kill biology or erase the girl that was. His history can't be escaped in cases like this, and my history called to me, over and over again. Even after I got married, had 2 children, and started a new job as a physician's assistant, I still thought about my other life, before I became this woman named Jennifer. After 20 years, I felt that tiny question nagging at me. One flight, and a 35-minute Uber later, I was standing just outside the jail that held the man I once called a father. All of those years without exchanging a single word. I couldn't be sure if he would even agree to see me. But then I remembered the man he was, how much he loved me and adored being a father. I willed myself to move and opened the door. I signed in at the visitor's desk and waited for the guard to come out and say that he would see me. Hours passed without a word, which chipped away at my confidence. But just as I was about to stand up and walk out, the door opened and I was ushered in. The room was small, warm from poor air circulation. It smelt of sweat and metal, with a splash of bleach and Windex. I'm sure my father hated the swirl of incompatible chemicals. I certainly couldn't stand it, but I swallowed my pride and sat in the only metal chair that was available. A few moments later, on the other side of the plexiglass wall, he sauntered in. His gaze was set on the floor, but I could make out the signs of aging on his face, no doubt from stress and time spent around mildewy walls. I leaned forward, picked up the phone. I waited for him to do the same. And when he did, he finally looked at me. So many years, so many memories between us, and one question. "So," I started, "do you want to know where I hid the 7th body? Neptune's lair. When I met her, word on the street was that Esme was beyond help. Her friends called her crazy and borderline. By the religiously inclined of former times, she might have been thought of as demon-possessed. During drunken fits, she'd get into fistfights or threaten to throw herself from freeway overpasses. She walked a thin line and repeatedly upset rumors of her demise, taking immense pride in being what she called stronger than dirt. She had a breathalyzer in her car. 2 years ago, she'd overturned her Hyundai in an incident where she was discovered to be 3 times over the legal blood alcohol limit. She made financial ends meet by renting her body out for clinical trials, hoping the entire time that she'd taken placebos instead of the experimental medications upstart pharmaceutical companies produced for everything from bipolar disorder to angina. There were times she'd come home from one of these lab rat money runs with side effects, bad ones, but they'd eventually subside and she'd make jokes about how at least she hadn't become the victim of sudden death syndrome. That Esme, tougher than dirt, as resilient as rubber. Even though she smoked all my stuff, drank all my wine, and frequently resorted to flings with Little Dicky, a former boyfriend I suspected provided her with something I couldn't, I felt something for her. I made what I called minimum rage, flipping beef patties and assembling burgers at a late-night boardwalk diner called Cracker Jack's. Before the week was up, with Esme's and my drug debts, I'd be begging tourists for change to buy spare cigarettes. For a while, we resided in a tent on the rooftop of a building where Desmond Tutu Phillips, a friend since freshman year in high school, was the apartment building manager. Desmond risked losing his job for giving Esme and me a key to the restricted access rooftop. Despite our unconventional ways, he had the patience of Jesus with us. Even so, I'd still piss over the side of the building, and Esme would relieve herself where and whenever convenient. When we got too grungy, we'd take care of our hygiene needs at the showers meant for beachgoers. At night, we read copiously by battery-operated lantern light and shared a predilection for somber stuff. Our favorites were Rimbaud, Baudelaire, Camus, and Hamid. When we tired of the Cracker Jack's grub I'd bring to our squatter pad, we'd get high and end up eating red velvet cake and whatever else she'd send me to shoplift from the supermarket a 10-minute walk away. On the stroll back home, paranoid from the nearly toxic cosmic kush, and with my backpack stuffed with our pilfered renegade sustenance, I'd be startled by the sounds of passing cars, thinking a cop was sooner or later bound to stop me for stealing Esme's and my daily booze and bread. Although I feared the cops, I always suspected my weed paranoia was caused by a much deeper-seated guilty conscience. I should have confronted Little Dicky a long time ago. Also, I had left my mother's side when I felt her senescence was becoming a burden. There's no way I had the resolve or character to be the caregiver for an aging parent. When I confessed these thoughts to Esme, she'd dismiss my concerns and say I needed to stop overthinking things. I remember once when Esme and I were walking home from a party, she said, pointing to a couple of graffiti-spraying gangbangers, "Javier, I'm scared. That guy with the Supreme hoodie has a gun." He pointed it at me, never sure whether she really meant such things, but fueled by drug and alcohol-induced courage, I confronted the guy. "Hey man," I said to the one Esme had referred to. "You know what I am?" "A janky spick boy with a death wish," he answered with a sneer. "No, I'm a delinquent out to get delinquents. What you gonna do with that heater?" Turns out he didn't have a gun, just another can of neon spray paint, but he wasn't overly enthused by the tete-to-tete I had with him. He and his friend didn't kick my ass, but Mr. Supreme sprayed me in the eyes with the paint. Esme started mouthing off to him, but even though I was partially blinded, I pulled her away for fear that we'd both get battered. Those are the kind of stupid things I'd do for Esme, but the important thing to me was she would call me things like her ballsy little soldier, and lavish me with affection after I'd go out on a limb for her. I put blood, sweat, and tears into the relationship, and rarely did I think it wasn't worth it. The end of our star-crossed romance began after Esme came back from the free clinic where Dr. For the People, Randolph Hamilton, told her she had cervical cancer. After she heard the diagnosis, Esme became determined to go out with a bang. She began visiting Little Dicky more frequently. She demanded I steal tequila instead of wine from the supermarket, and when she drank the Patron I'd bring to our squatter's abode, her temper became hair-trigger sensitive. The only respite I'd get from her gloomy rages would come when I'd invite her to the beach when the moon was full. Apparently, Little Dicky had something against doing things that smacked of romance or chivalry with her. Moonlit midnight swims in the Pacific were one such pastime Dicky didn't seem to have a taste for. On the nights Esme and I'd sink our toes into the wet sand while the moon's phantasmagorical light reflected onto the dark side of the earth, she'd momentarily forget about her terminal diagnosis. She'd also forget about her mortal condition whenever we'd watch movies at the rooftop squat. I don't know if it's the case with most people, but when I'm high and watching a good flick, I'll hear messages in the movie's dialogue. I'll also interpret anything someone says out loud about the film to have personal relevance. I've heard these phenomena are called thoughts of reference by those in the field of mental health. Schizophrenics have them, but I guess when I'm high, I might get a little schizophrenic. Makes me wonder why I keep smoking the cosmic kush. But one night, while viewing Scarface with Esme for the 5th or 6th time, she said something along the lines of, "God, it's just so good. I can't get enough of it." To my cognitively distorting and high mind, Esme wasn't talking about the film's extended denouement where Tony Montana gets shot by his sister, then exterminates a battalion of rival narco-gangster cockroaches before he ends up floating face down, bloodied and bullet-riddled in his "The World Is Yours" Miami drug boss mansion. No, Esme wasn't talking about the film. My mind interpreted her statement as referring to her relationship with Little Dicky. Before Montana gets the shotgun blast in the back that finally does him in, Esme exclaimed, "Jesus, we all know he's doomed." When she said that, I couldn't help but believe that she was referring to our friend and benefactor, Desmond. If for whatever reason Desmond was doomed, Esme and I would soon be off the rooftop and into the street, nowhere for a loving couple to be, especially when one in the pair has terminal cancer. I didn't know whether Esme's words would attract fate, but I knew that her despair was making her behave more erratically. She started to break down in tears when she'd think of having to be holed up in a hospital or hospice, awaiting the inevitable during the last stages of her disease. That night after the movie, and while coming down off the perception-altering shrubbery, I decided to take a course of action. The next morning, I bought 2 tabs of acid off Tripster Todd, a boardwalk dealer of LSD, and various other hallucinogens. I told Esme that we'd go for a swim at the beach after I got off my shift at midnight. We walked to the beach at close to 2 a.m. On the way there, I picked a purple flower, whose name I didn't know from a garden in front of a well-tended house. As we walked, I put the flower in Esme's hair. The moonless night sky's inkiness was blinding. The tide was low, and we had to walk a good distance to the water. There was no one on that portion of the beach except for us. As she dipped down into the waters ahead of me, Esme expressed her gratefulness for not having any open wounds, given that a recent outbreak of carnivorous bacteria made coastal immersions risky for bathers thusly exposed. Before going waist-deep into the water, I surreptitiously took the 2 tabs of LSD I'd bought from Tripster. After letting the acid dissolve, I gave Esme a prolonged French kiss. In little time, my vision, swayed by the acid, started playing tricks on me. Although there was virtually no light on the beach, my eyes summoned a warm, radiant glow in the heavens above. "Jav, I feel funny," said Esme. I splashed her with water and told her that she was okay, that everything was going to be okay. I knew what I had to do. I played out a dialogue in my mind where I said, "You need to confess," and asked her why she was always going to see little Dickie. In my mind, she responded, "My lips are sealed." "That's exactly what they aren't," my courageous imagination told her. We were up to our solar plexuses in the ocean. I took hold of her shoulders and dunked her beneath. She came up, laughed, then, giddy from the acid, childishly said, "Jav, I'm going to die." I said, "No, you're not, love. You're going to live forever. Remember, Esmeralda Lucero is tougher than dirt." I repeated the dunking gesture, this time less playfully, taking a fraction of a second longer than Esme deemed comfortable for her to be under the tide. The third time I dunked her was even more forceful. She struggled in my grip under the water. I crossed a threshold. She freed herself from my hold, surfaced, then said, "What do you think you're doing?" More in the form of an exclamation than a question. I smiled. The white of my teeth infuriated Esme more. "It's not funny, you hijo de puta. Why do I feel like I'm tripping?" She screamed before trying to dig her nails into my eyes. The time had arrived. I knew the cure. I put her neck into a vice-like hold in the crook of my right elbow and dunked her under the dark waters again. Her arms flailed about. She tried to kick, she writhed, but I held fast. I could hear her submerged cries, but they were muffled and accompanied by an upbubbling of exasperated air. Her writhing gradually slowed down until she managed a last, weak exhalation and final spasm, and then yielded her spirit to the Pacific Ocean. I left her body floating where I had drowned it. Even though no one had heard or seen what transpired, I was still tripping on the acid, and the walk back to Desmond's apartment building was haunted by bogeymen and illusionary images of people pointing fingers and whispering accusations. I climbed the stairs to the rooftop where my unhoused person's hovel was located, lit a cigarette, and was overcome by an urge to write a song. I took out my notebook and a pen and started scribbling. Moonless night, world's delight, me, you drowning, out of sight, we fear most. Give up the ghost, but before we do, let's make a toast on our tongues. Still feeling young, summon moon, and avoid the sun. We'll be scared, 'cause we've dared. Court Pluto, in Neptune's lair. I put the pen down, satisfied with the verses, and thought of the poor and beaten down, of the fact that we are all victims to the onslaught of implacable and incorrigible time. I thought of what could have been, and of what now would never be between Esme and me. After another cigarette, I laid on my rooftop sleeping bag, unable to forgive myself, despite my best intentions, for the simple thing, the merciful thing I'd done. Before I knew it, I had cried myself to a still and unrepentant slumber, the sleep of both the wolf and the lamb, of the innocently voracious and the imperfectly innocent. The plunderer's bank robbery and waltzing have a lot in common. Both have defined rhythms, and they're better with a partner. After waiting my turn, like an everyday customer, I handed my note and a paper sack to the blonde girl behind the counter while pulling back my sport coat to show her the butt of my pistol. The note read, "This is a robbery. Remain calm so no one gets hurt. Fill the sack from your drawer. Have a nice day." When she scanned my note, her eyes bulged and flicked from side to side. Her frightened blue peepers filled with disbelief as she stared at me to see if this was a prank. I smiled like a friend. Please fill it up. With trembling fingers, she stuffed bills into the sack as if she'd win a prize for the fullest bag. The gorilla behind me noticed something wrong. Maybe the sweat-gouging channels through the quivering blonde's rouge tipped him off. He grunted and grabbed me in a bear hug, pinning my arms. My marine training kicked in and I stomped the arch of his foot with the sharp leather heel of my polished Oxfords. He winced and loosened his grip. This gave me enough slack to reach behind and twist his balls. He yipped like an injured puppy and let go, slowly sinking to the floor. The bank patrons turned to stare at the commotion. Unsure what was happening, I reached through the teller's wicket and yanked the half-filled sack of money from the blonde's jittery hands. As my assailant rolled on the floor, grabbing his crotch, one of the suits in the back reached for a phone. Time to go. I strolled out of the bank before anyone attempted to jump me. Outside the bank, I wanted to run, but nothing attracts attention more than a man running from a bank with a bag in his hand. The alarm clanged, and I turned towards the bank like the other pedestrians, plastering a puzzled look on my face. A siren wailed in the distance. Sweat beaded my forehead, and I lengthened my strides short of a power walk. When I reached the corner, white exhaust flowed from the red Edsel coupe, and its big V8 growled, ready to whisk me to safety. I jumped in the passenger seat, and Marge drove away at 30 miles per hour. 2 police cruisers screamed past us in the other lane. Now, we'd have to ditch this flashy car in case anyone noticed it fleeing the scene. Marge and I have been robbing banks since I got out of the Marines in '53. My posting to Korea separated us for 3 agonizing years. And when I got back to the States, we promised each other we'd never be apart again. Although we talked about it, we never got married. We both felt that a piece of government parchment would not make us love each other any more than we did. When our cash ran low, we'd find a suitable bank in a small town, make an unauthorized withdrawal, and live comfortably on the proceeds for a few months. As long as we didn't take too much or go to the well too often, the local cops forgot us, and the FBI had enough problems with organized crime to worry about a small-town bank robbery. We never hit the same town twice. Our life between jobs was quiet and measured, spending the winter in Florida, soaking up the sun like other tourists. We danced every Saturday night and fished the local lakes. Marge loved the fall colors, so we spent September in New England before turning south for the winter. I don't remember the name of the town in Minnesota when we ran low on cash. While Marge gassed up the car, I got us a table in the Moosehead Diner. Over the blue plate special of corned beef and hash, I decided I wanted to go fishing. Margie, I've been thinking. It would be a shame to be in northern Minnesota and not go walleye fishing. How about we rent a cabin after this job and go fishing for the weekend? Marge placed her napkin on the table and pursed her lips. Okay, Harry, but all the cabins are probably rented. I reached for her hand. This is the end of the season, and we'll find a cabin somewhere, just for the weekend. Then we'll head for Vermont. She squeezed my hand and ran her thumb over my knuckles. We'll need some bait. I hadn't thought that far ahead. We'll stop at a bait shop and pick up some minnows. Or, if you'd rather, you can watch me fish. She removed her cat's eyeglasses with the fake rhinestones and leaned over the table. Not on your life, Buster. You fish. I fish. And I'll catch bigger fish. Just you watch me. I finished my coffee, left a $10 bill on the table, and wiped the crumbs off my tie. I'm going to the little boy's room, and then to work. As I walked across the street to the Imperial Bank, Marge parked the car around the corner. We took the North Road out of town towards Canada and doubled back south on a series of gravel concession roads. Navigation was Marge's job. When we hit the interstate, we turned east towards New England. The cops must have figured it out, or got lucky. They'd had 10 years to learn out our pattern. When we turned onto the interstate, 2 police cruisers, nose to nose, blocked our path to freedom. Blue and red lights flashed, and cops leaned across the hoods, pointing shotguns at us. 2 more cruisers pulled out of a side road and blocked our retreat. Marge slowed as we approached the roadblock and parked on the shoulder. A cop with a bullhorn yelled, "Get out of the car and lay on the ground." Marge turned off the ignition and gripped the wheel with hands at 10 and 2 while staring out the windshield. "Goodbye, Harry." I wiped a tear from my eye. "Goodbye, Marge." I drew my pistol and shot her through the ear. Blood spattered the windshield and side window as she slumped on the driver's door. I put the pistol in my mouth and pulled the trigger. "Banana robbers!" They were laughing as they took the last of the money from the friendly banana bank. They knew that after this day, that they would be the richest bananas of the banana world. They had to make a quick escape, though. The alarms were ringing in their ears. The banana cops were on their way. They could just hear the cops as they ran. Be Banana and Go Banana made a great team. They were the best bananas at robbing. They knew that after they robbed, they would have to split the money and have to pretend that they were innocent. They were also great actors. They knew to be part of the banana stampede after they robbed, so they could pretend like they were there the whole time. The banana stampede took place every day at the banana park. It was the best place to hide after doing something wrong. Everyone at the banana stampede knew how it felt to do something wrong. They were all banana criminals at one point. They all got the wrath of the sacred rule breaking punishment. They all stopped committing crimes after that. Once they reached the banana stampede, they were very hangry, so they killed a fellow banana and ate him. They hid the remains of the fellow banana. They knew that if they got caught, then they would be in huge trouble. They heard the banana cops coming. The cops started asking around if they saw anyone who came from the direction of the friendly banana bank. One of the bananas started crying. She told everyone that B Banana and Go Banana killed her husband. The cops took them to Banana Court. They finally started court after a long lecture about how you drive banana cars, which was way off topic. They had the whole banana stampede there that was not causing a stampede currently. They had a bunch of chairs in random groups. The judge was sitting down in a giant chair with bananas all over it. He also had a small desk with a banana volunteer to be the hammer. Welcome to the all-wonderful court, where we find out if you are guilty or not. Da Banana Judge told everyone, "Everyone take your seats and be quiet unless I tell you to speak. Today, we have two problems. The friendly banana bank has been robbed with not a single trace of money left. There was also a murder at the banana stampede that was caught by Mrs. Banana, witnessed. Mrs. Banana, will you tell us what you saw?" Of course, I was talking to him, and all of the sudden, I saw a knife through him. I looked behind him, and I saw B Banana and Go Banana with the knife. Then they ate every single little piece of him. It was like a nightmare, Mrs. Banana declared. B Banana and Go Banana, you two have earned 10 seconds in jail so far, Da Banana Judge said. Mr. Peel, you said you saw who stole the money from the friendly banana bank. Will you tell us what you saw? Yes, I was walking my banog, and I saw B Banana and Go Banana walk into the bank. I stalled so I could see what they were doing. After a while, they came out with stacks and stacks of money. I ran as fast as I could to the nearest cop. I told them what I saw. That day, I also saw them steal all my banog bones. I was so mad. I wanted to tell the cops, but I thought that it wasn't as important as other things. Mr. Peel said, "Thank you, B Banana and Go Banana. Will you tell us your side of the story to see if you get 15 seconds in the corner or not?" Da Banana Judge said, "Yes, da wonderful judge. We were at the banana restaurant, and then when we were done, we saw Mr. Peel steal the money. We saw him run to his house and then tell the cops lies. When we went down to the banana stampede and saw Mrs. Banana murder her own husband," Go Banana said. By this point, the room was filled with murmurs. Everyone was standing, and they were scared to know who was the actual imposter. The volunteer banana hit his loudly and hard, on purposely. The room filled with silence. Thank you. I cannot tell who is guilty or not, so you four get to go to jail for 20 seconds. Da Banana Judge said, "Be bananas, go bananas, Mrs. Bananas," and Mr. Peel's faces were filled with shock. The banana cops pushed them into a jail. 20 seconds later, they were free to go out. Be Banana and Go Banana knew that that was an awful punishment, and that they would never commit a crime again. But one thing bothered them. They wanted to know the punishments. They knew that they shouldn't commit another crime to do it, but catch someone committing a crime. One day, they reported someone stealing someone's jewelry. It was Mr. Chop, who was a retired server. Once they got to court, there was another lecture about how it is so easy to turn sides, and another lecture after that about what kind of bananas make videos. Finally, court started, and they found out that Mr. Chop was actually just helping a friend return jewelry. No one was put in jail, but on the way out, while DA Judge was having a conversation with other people, Be Banana and Go Banana stole the sacred rule book. They almost got caught, and they decided to take a drive. They didn't take just any drive. They took the longest drive ever in the banana history. The drive took 12 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. The next day, they went on the second longest drive in the banana history. They drove through mountains and valleys, and finally onto the banana interstate. The getaway. The door was waiting for him, already open for a quick entrance into the inconspicuous car. Tony ran as fast as he could, chucking the duffel bags full of money into the back as he more or less dove into the passenger seat. "Drive!" Tony screamed at Jackie. "Drive, goddammit! Drive!" Jackie. Scaletta did not need to be told. Before Tony had even entered the vehicle, he had popped the clutch into drive. Before the passenger door was even closed, he tore down the road like a bat out of hell. Tires screeched like a woman getting murdered as the unnoticeable but powerful car growled down Lexington Street. A traffic light had just turned red as the car ran through it, narrowly avoiding collision with an expensive luxury vehicle. The driver honked loudly, laying on the horn in shock and frustration. But neither Jackie nor Tony D'Amato gave it much notice. They were too fixed on the wailing of police car sirens already going off in the distance, coming after them. "We did it, Jackie!" Tony screamed more than said. "We just robbed Lexington Bank, the cream of the crop. We are gold, my friend." Jackie only nodded in reply. He was too busy focusing on the road, maneuvering cars, hopping onto the sidewalk and the wrong side of the roads to say anything. Tony was shaking and excited. as a child who had just scored the game-winning touchdown in a Pee-wee football game. But Jackie was calm and collected. A professional getaway driver, if there ever was one. Just a little bit further, we'll be over state lines. Then after that, on our way to Mexico to live like kings, Jackie. We did. Whoa, look out! A wall of police cruisers was creating a blockade to the entrance of the interstate. Tony grew nervous immediately. Visions of himself and Jackie being torn up by a barrage of Tommy gun fire flashed through his mind. Torn apart by bullets as they did to Bonnie and Clyde. However, Jackie had prepared for this. He knew what to do. "Hold on to something," Jackie said, with the coolness of an ice-cold killer. His face was determined, his eyes focused. "Hold on," Tony shouted. "Hold on to what?" He reacted just in time as Jackie popped the wheels on the shoulder of the entrance, scraping the passenger side of the car against the cement barriers that blocked cars from falling down the steep hill. "Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!" Tony shouted. Sparks flew like crazy fireworks off his side of the vehicle, he noticed with wide eyes. The getaway car had attacked the weak spot of the barricade. Cops dove out of the way in fear as the driver's side of the car clipped a police cruiser in the rear bumper. The collision was hard enough to knock the law enforcement car on its side. Gunshots fired harmlessly as the getaway car merged with the interstate traffic. The road to freedom. "We made it! Holy shit! Jackie, you old son of a bitch! We made it!" Tony hollered. He was shaking in excitement and fear. A bit of shock had also clouded his mind. He vomited quickly, but violently out the window. "Calm down, Paisan," Jackie said calmly. "We aren't free yet. Look behind us." Tony swore when he turned his head to see black and white cop cars following behind. Traffic had pulled over to the sides of the road to allow a path for the police to drive through. Tony had visions of Moses parting the Red Sea upon seeing this. "What do we do?" Tony asked, horrified again. "You let me do my job," Jackie told his childhood friend calmly. "You did your part. Now it's my time to shine." He gunned the accelerator once again. The engine of the car growled like a lion on the attack. Except they were the antelope, and the police, the lions. The rear windshield imploded with a sharp snap as glass fell to the floor of the car. "They're shooting at us!" Tony yelped. Another bullet hit the metal of the car's exterior with a loud knocking sound. "Well?" Jackie told Tony, like a father teaching his son a lesson. "Fire back." Tony reached between his legs for the weapon. A Thompson machine gun with a 50-round drum loaded. He racked the first shot into the chamber, aimed intently at the leading cop car, and squeezed the trigger. The gun went off, sounding like a barrage of drums, vibrating off the walls. The car Tony had been aiming at lost control and collided with a semi-truck that was pulled over. One down. How many more to go? Tony asked himself in his mind. Good job, Jackie said calmly, still focusing on winding through the traffic on the highway. Most drivers had gotten the message and pulled off where they could, but a few stubborn ones kept on going like nothing was happening. Great. Now we have a cop murder to add to our list, Jackie's mind told him. He shook his head to clear the thought away. The car stank of burnt gunpowder, and a ringing accompanied the ears of both men as Tony loaded another drum into the rifle. Don't shoot unless they shoot first, Jackie spoke, or if they get too close. Even still, try aiming for the tires. Don't worry, I don't intend on killing anybody unless I have to, Tony replied. Jackie was thankful for this sentence from his friend. They weren't murderers. There was no one else Jackie would aid robbing a bank with. A bullet shattered a small hole in the windshield. It narrowly missed Jackie's throat. His blood went cold as he felt the ripple of air pass by his skin. A second one ripped another spot through the windshield, this one hitting its mark. Fuck, Tony yelped, throwing his right hand onto his left arm. Blood stained his fingers. Another barricade stood ahead. This 1-3 rows deep, with paddy wagons and cruisers blocking the interstate. Tony, Jackie shouted, momentarily taking his eyes off the path to look at his friend. Are you okay? Yeah, Tony spoke through gritted teeth. Just took some muscle and skin. Missed the bone. I need you to lay some covering fire when I say, Jackie told him. What are we gonna do, buddy? Tony asked. His pain was, at the moment, dulled by the fear that their escape had come to an end. No Mexico. The bullet would have to be extracted from his arm. Just wait, Jackie replied, his voice getting lower and lower as he repeated, Wait, wait, wait. Okay, now. Fire, Jackie screamed. Tony leaned out the window and sprayed a barrage of bullets out of the end of the machine gun, aiming over the cops' heads. It was enough to scare the uniformed men to duck behind their vehicles as Jackie screamed the car over the grassy area between the lanes of the interstate, straightening on the wrong side as family cruisers and semi-trucks came dangerously close to head-on collisions with them. He rolled back onto the right side of the road once they had cleared the barricade, passing a sign that happily welcomed the two into the next state. We made it, Tony shouted. Holy Christ, Jackie. You did it. We are clear. Bravo, paisano. They had made it into the next state. Tomorrow morning, they would ditch the vehicle and get into another one to make the drive into Mexico. They were not safe yet. There was still the worry of a nationwide manhunt or getting stopped at the border. But for now, Jackie Scaletta and Tony D'Amato were safe. They continued down the interstate. Citizens, death. She trembled uncontrollably as he pushed the muzzle into her forehead. Nobody moves or makes a sound. Any heroics, bullets will start flying. As you can probably tell, this is a bank heist. Cooperate, and I'll spare you all your lives. Please don't kill me. I'll take you to the vault right now. Shut it. I decide when we go, he replied as he jarred her head back with the barrel. The hostages looked on in slouched postures, with furrowed brows and gaping mouths, wondering if the gun's magazine was loaded or not. For the bank manager's sake, they hoped it wasn't, and that he was pretending to have a loaded gun, because they believed this sort of heist was to scare people into submission with no real intention to harm them. After all, it was only one guy, not a group of robbers. "Hey, mister, my wife's so scared, her water has just broken," exclaimed a hostage. "We need medics, quickly." "I said no heroics," he exclaimed, striking the butt of the gun to the bank manager's temple. She fell in a heap, motionless. "Now look at what you've made me do. I mean it, people. Don't try my patience, or one by one, it'll be you lot getting the bullet. Are you crazy? My wife is in pain. She thinks the baby is in the wrong position. We need a doctor now." He sighed and approached the pregnant woman and knelt by her side. She was shaking and sweating uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry about this, but I can't have you or your husband messing this up. There's $20 million in the vault, and I want some of it, no matter what the cost. Please, just take the money and go quickly. We'll say nothing to the police," replied the woman. The bank manager opened her eyes. She sat up, propping her back against the wall. All she heard was 2 shots fired, followed by a cacophony of screams and chaos. He fired another shot to the ceiling, and the room fell silent. Order was restored. "Right, you lot, clean the blood up, and then drag the pregnant woman and her husband over to the far corner," he demanded. "Are you fucking crazy, man? You've killed an unborn baby and the mother and father," exclaimed another hostage. "In this game, there's always collateral damage. Now shut it," he said, training the Glock on him. He glanced through a window. The street outside Citizen Bank was as normal as he'd expected. So far, 2 minutes had passed since he'd entered the bank. There was another 5 minutes before the NYPD would have the building surrounded. So far, so good. With the entrance door locked, nobody had approached or tried to enter the bank. Still partially dazed, the bank manager attempted to stand. She stumbled, but he soon skittered back to her and pushed her to the floor. "Stay down until I say otherwise, got it?" He slid the rucksack from his back and pulled out a large bag of cable ties and tied her hands behind her back. Then he tied her legs, leaving enough movement for her to walk, but not run. With 2 less hostages to not worry about, he made quick time in using more ties to bound the other 8 hostages. "Okay, people, if I hear the slightest of sounds or sense the smallest of movements, one of you will be joining those bodies over there." He hauled the bank manager to her feet and pushed her in front to lead the way to the vault. She stumbled and fell to her knees with a hard thud. He grabbed her hair and wrenched her back to her feet. She screamed, and the hostages felt her pain. In retaliation, she spun and spat in his face. She quickly felt the back of his hand make contact with her cheekbone. It sent her tumbling for a second time, but she didn't get up. He didn't let her. Instead, he grabbed her hair and dragged her to the vault. The hostages winced, imagining her discomfort as her legs flailed in a futile attempt to stall him. Now that he's down in the vault, we have to do something, whispered a hostage. He looked mid-30s, with a physique of a guy that worships a gym. Are you out of your fucking mind, sir? You heard what the guy said, right? If you can cut me loose, I can take him. I'm ex-military. Apprehension is my forte. I've got a small knife in my back pocket. Can you reach it? You're gonna get us all killed trying to be the hero. NYPD will be here soon. They'll take him out. Only if someone has activated the alarm. There were moments of silence. He was waiting for a reply that never came. I thought not. But the guy keeps checking his watch, and he thinks they're on their way. I can activate the alarm so the cops know, and then I'll take him out. No, man. You're not hearing me. I can't let you do this. I've got a wife and kids. He'll shoot us all. What do the rest of you think? Are you with me? The rest of the hostages didn't respond. You try anything, man. I'll take you down myself. Just trust me, man. It's worth a try, replied a hostage. He's trained. He knows what he's doing. The locks released. He turned the catch, and the door to the vault swung open. What the fuck? He said, staring into the barrel of a Glock 19. You didn't tell me there was security in the vault, he said to the manager. She connected with his gaze and dropped her shoulders. I ain't security, replied the guy standing at the entrance of the vault. Stop what you're doing, and nobody else has to get hurt. It was a stalemate situation. Both guys had their guns trained at each other, fingers twitching at the triggers, and then, bang, the guy in the entrance to the vault fell. He was soon surrounded by a pool of his own blood. He began to load as much cash as he could into the two large holdalls by his side. He could hardly zip them up, but to his estimation, he had at least $600,000 in each. Way less than what he wanted, but enough to start up somewhere new. With one bag on his back and the other in his left hand, he grabbed her hair with his right and dragged her back to the main foyer, where he noticed one of the hostages was missing. From out of nowhere, the hostage charged toward him, thigh and drived him to the floor, like the New York Giants were playing out in front of them. They tussled about, but the hostage found himself being overpowered and had the barrel of the Glock shoved in his mouth. Bang. All the remaining hostages jump out of their skins as blood and bits of brain matter splattered all over them. The hostage lay there in a bloody, gory mess that was too much for most of them to look. "Hey, mister," we tried to tell him it was a stupid idea, but he didn't listen, replied one of the hostages. "He's paid with his life for his insubordination." He checked his watch, and 4 minutes had passed. "Time to check out. The manager is coming with me. Inform the police I have her as my hostage, and any attempt to intercept me, and she gets the bullet, right?" Exiting the Citizen Bank, he threw the holdalls in the trunk of his General Lee, while the bank manager got into the passenger side. He put the pedal to the metal and sped his way along Valley Stream. There were no police in sight. Perhaps the NYPD had other emergencies, he thought. He took a left and followed the sign that was heading for Brooklyn. "Okay, Max, you can stop calling me the bank manager now," said Elizabeth. "And you didn't have to be so rough on me. It had to look like you were another hostage. I just hope when you shot that guy in the vault, you were obscured from the cameras so it looked like me. But how did we miss that guy? I think I did good shooting him, but too many mistakes were made this time. I should have accounted for the guy in the vault." "Yeah, but you dealt with him pretty quick. From how we played it out, the cops will think you were innocent. But what about the hostage that thigh and drived you? If you hadn't have got the better of him, we wouldn't be here now. We've got enough money, and I don't have to work in a shitty bank anymore." He took another left and entered on to Interstate 678. He leant over to the passenger's seat. Their lips engage. "New life. Here we come," she said. "Blow your head off. Caution. Based on true story. Contains gore. It's all fun and games until you blow your head off." Before the 1960s, before I made this my home, our lovely town was known for stately elm trees canopying the main street north of the river. But a deadly elm tree disease raged through, infecting them all. The ones not killed quickly succumbed to progress, as the street was widened to 4 lanes instead of 2 for the thoroughfare through town. The Men's Garden Club decided to beautify the landscape by planting a few flowers. That project soon turned into lovely, bright pink petunias lining all the main highways in the city. When my dad took a job at the local mental health asylum before he moved the rest of us here, I remember him sending us a postcard showing the streets lined with petunias sweeping under the memorial arch, with the name of the town emblazoned upon it. Another landmark of the town. When our family arrived, that was the first sight I saw of our new home. As the plantings increased, a petition was made to the state, and soon the community of 15,000 was dubbed the Petunia City. In a short time, an annual celebration was created to honor the designation, called the Petunia Festival, held around the 4th of July. The festival midway games and rides, along with arts and craft or car shows, bingo, and a beer garden with live bands, attracted huge crowds from all over. It even became renowned enough that a popular game show in the early 70s, the dating game, presented a trip to the Petunia Festival as the grand prize to the winning couple. Welcomed as dignitaries, the excited couple became the grand marshals of the parade that year. I'm sure the experience made a lasting impression on them. The party always ended with a spectacular fireworks display, locally provided by a certified trained family who volunteered their services. In my teenage years, in a town without a lot to do other than cruising Galena Avenue from Peoria Avenue to the south, to Lowell Park Road, to the north, back and forth, not counting stopping to sit at the courthouse corner to wave at other cruisers. The 4th of July Petunia Festival was the highlight of the summer. Lots of fun and games. Walking the midway hand in hand with someone special. Hawkers trying to get him to win you a prize. Stealing a kiss on top of the Ferris wheel. Eating elephant ears and corn dogs. Feeling nauseous after the spinning rides. Participating in the talent contest. Dancing to the music. Watching the marching bands compete. In my very young motherhood years, it was a struggle to get all my children downtown, at least for the fireworks. This particular year stands out in my memory. My husband was a police officer on a small police force, overstressed as the population exploded on those few days. He was not available to help much with the family. We may have taken the little ones to Kids' Day for a short time to ride the kiddie rides. The carnival company often comped the force a few free coupons, and I may have gotten my younger sister to walk the few blocks from my parents' house to the parade route alongside me with the stroller and the other two in tow. What little ones don't love a parade? But for the fireworks, I was on my own. Anyway, I don't remember planning to go with anyone else. My high school sweetheart husband and I had 4 kids in 5 years, back in the early 70s. I believe their ages at the time must have been 5, 4, 2, and I was expecting my bicentennial baby. Exactly why I thought it was even necessary to attend those sparklers on my own with all those babes. In my condition, I'll never know. The festival is held on the high school grounds along the river. A lovely setting for the fireworks, reflecting over the river. Trouble is, there aren't any parking lots close by, which means street parking wherever and however close you can get. The viewing is great if you can get to standing room only on the bridge. Otherwise, it is, well, up in the air. Hard to tell until the blossoms start exactly where you can see them from, due to trees blocking most displays. Over the years, one thinks they have it figured out. Then the organizers suddenly decide to change the venue. Starting point. I cannot tell you how many different viewing spots we have selected or rejected. Anyway, back to my waddling all over town stroller and 2 cranky, tired toddlers in tow. Ah, nice grassy spot at end of bridge, big enough for blanket, and maybe a shot at seeing something. Hope the noise isn't too scary for my tots. For some reason, I am remembering when I was little, I never wanted to get too close, for fear a spark might land on me. Anytime I saw someone in a wheelchair, I wondered if that is what happened to them. Hello, Mary. So nice to see you. My musing was interrupted by a somewhat familiar voice. Oh, great. My old boyfriend. Wouldn't you know, haven't seen him for years. And he finds me looking oh so fine. Hi, Joe. Great to see you too. You remember Maureen, right? Her family moved into the old Victorian farmhouse you used to live in. We got married. We are expecting our first baby. Looks like you have another on the way. Are all of these yours? Can never have too many. Congratulations to both of you. They have a way of changing your life, but in a good way. Well, enjoy the show, and best of luck to you. And to you, too. Ah, the bombs, booms have started. Thank goodness. My little troop actually were enjoying the action. Even with all the noise and commotion around us, seemed it was ramping up. Then suddenly, it all went silent. There was an extremely long pause, way longer than I ever remember, between starbursts. The crowd noticed and seemed to get fidgety and restless. That display was far shorter than usual, and there was no grand finale when they send up multiples at one time. Were they that short on funds this year? Sometimes they would send out donation seekers to pay for next year's display. No one had been around to our corner yet, and the time dragged on and on. Suddenly, you could hear the wails of ambulances. Oh no! Something bad must have happened. They are headed to the area the fireworks are detonated. That is not good. Not good at all. There was mumbling among the crowd. It was obvious the show was over for the night, and people started drifting away, scratching their heads and wondering why. I gathered my crew, and we started our trek back to our vehicle. My husband knew, and it wasn't good. The young man in charge of lighting off the display had a problem with one tube. No one present actually saw the moment it happened, but he must have been leaning over the faulty tube, looking for the problem, when it exploded in his face, decapitating him. All the witnesses could immediately see was him engulfed in smoke. I didn't know it at the time, but this man lived in our neighborhood. His 2 children went to school with my children. His widow never did remarry and passed away a few years ago. She was a very strong woman to survive what she did and raise her children on her own. The tragedy was also devastating to the Petunia Festival. The Paul pulled the fireworks off the agenda for years afterwards. The event will turn 60 years old this summer. Yes, it is all fun and games until someone blows his head off. Jingles. I moved the knife quickly, slicing with apt purpose. The bell of the cat's collar fell to the floor. Jingle, jingle. This was the third time I've done this since we first got this cat. I just can't stand the jingling of the collar, and I wanted it to look like the cat had somehow clawed it off, or had rubbed it against something outside, causing it to scrape off. Hopefully, my family will stop insisting that the cat have a bell on her collar after realizing she's just going to keep losing it. Nothing against the cat, of course. Each time I cut that bell off of her collar, she just looks up at me curiously, possibly even thankfully, as if she too can't stand the sound of its jingling. Though I'm certain that the cat and I hate the sound of small jingling bells for two very different reasons. My wife, our 3 kids, and I recently moved to my old hometown. I was eager to leave this place as soon as I turned 18, and I couldn't explain to my wife why I didn't want to move back. The same reason why I can't explain to her why I hate the sound of jingling. I was just a kid. One summer here, when I was 12, my friends and I were hanging out on Main Street. "I want strawberry," the little kid exclaimed. They were probably 6 or 7, and they bounced excitedly up and down with a shining grin from one ear to the other, their hands raised up, one clenched around a handful of change. They were smiling adoringly up at the clown, who was dancing in front of an ice cream truck. Turning to the little boy with a smirk and a wink, the clown sang, "For $1, 1 strawberry. I've prepared it for you, especially." The clown was tall and slender. The makeup around his face was white with dark pink triangles around his mouth as well as his eyes, which were both wide and kind. He wore a large sky blue drape over a striped unitard with different shades of gold and purple with bright red accents. He wore a thick belt around his waist. At points around this belt, as well, from threads of the blue drape hung small, brass and shiny bells, which rang a chorus of jingling with every movement, and sang a nameless tune whenever he danced. And how this clown loved to dance. "Mr. Jingles! Mr. Jingles!" another kid cried. "Can I have an ice cream sandwich?" The clown, Mr. Jingles, widened his eyes as he looked down at her. He took a deep breath as his smile grew and said, "You're the first today to say my name. This one is for free." He gave her a free ice cream sandwich and did another dance as his feet kicked out, revealing 2 more jingling bells, each one attached to the tip of each of his curled shoes. He did little magic tricks with his hands, and all the children around him laughed and cheered. Some even tried mimicking his dance around him. My friends and I sat on our bikes at a distance, watching the laughable spectacle. "I betcha he diddles kids," Richie said with a snort. Nah, Brady retorted. My mom says he's retarded. He probably doesn't even know what to do with his junk. We all laughed at that. I scoffed, saying, whatever his problem is, he's fucking creepy. Ain't that the truth? Levi said. I can't be the only one who wants to do something about this guy. Each one of us turned to look at Levi. We didn't really have a leader, but if there was ever a title holder for lead troublemaker, it was Levi. We knew he had something brewing in his mind ever since he first saw Mr. Jingles, and I was eager to stick it to that clown. What you thinking? I asked, a mischievously wide smile growing on my face. Simple, Levi said coldly. We fuck with the clown until he leaves, and we make sure he stays gone. I had the simple job of distracting the clown. I thought this was the dumbest role placement in the history of pranks, seeing as I was never much of an actor. So when I walked up to Mr. Jingles, I just did what first came to my mind and started asking questions. Hey clown, what flavors you got? Mr. Jingles whirled in my direction. The quickness of that sudden movement and my proximity to him, I realized I was much more scared of this clown than I had initially thought I ever could be. Little kiddo, Mr. Jingles exclaimed. I've got flavors to match the rainbow. He kicked a leg out in a small dance maneuver. I've got sweets to make your hair grow. He laughed. I've got strawberry and chocolate, and long as you've got your wallet, I've got vanilla and mint, with a flashy green tint. There's pistachio and Neapolitan, but try not to get it on your chin. He laughed and chuckled, and that innocent sound within it made me start to think that maybe he didn't deserve to get ran out of town. I couldn't explain it, but he soothed me. All the fear and enmity I felt towards the clown seemed so unjustified now. But it was too late. Richie and Brady started banging against the hood of the ice cream truck while making guttural monkey noises. Mr. Jingles turned, his wide smile melting away in a thin line of confusion. He walked over to my friends, saying, "Heyo, kiddos, how about, and was cut off when the truck's engine started. The clown's head turned, and his mouth opened to a wide O of shock as he looked through the windshield. Levi was in the driver's seat and had turned on the truck. He started to run and shouted, "Oh no, kiddo, Mr. Jingles doesn't think," and was interrupted again when Richie pushed the clown over Brady, who was knelt behind him. The two ran away laughing. I was about to run too, and that's when I realized that Levi had more planned for what was meant to be a spread-out string of pranks on Mr. Jingles. As the clown gasped on the pavement, Levi revved the engine and then put the car in drive. He dove out of the side of the truck and sprinted down the block, faster than I'd ever seen him run before. I turned back, just in time to watch as Mr. Jingles's ice cream truck ran over his midsection. This caused the vehicle to swerve, forcing the rear tires to crush the clown's face. The body of the clown convulsed and spazzed, a monstrous ringing of disturbed jingling from the bells overlaid the tones of crushing bones, and a sound like that of a tossed watermelon. I was motionless and numb in indescribable horror as the vehicle rolled softly away, and I looked at the smeared remains of what used to be a human face. Blood gushed spastically out of a gaping maw that was once the mouth of Mr. Jingles, and more of it oozed out of his ears and coagulated in the ruffled tangles of his dyed pink hair. I stepped back, slowly at first, then turned and ran in the same direction as my friends. We were never named for that crime, though I knew my dad had his suspicions that we had something to do with it. It wouldn't be for a few years later that I wished we had come clean. After all, it was just supposed to be a prank. I don't think Richie and Brady thought Levi would do something like that, and I certainly didn't. I think I was just scared of what Levi would do if he ever found out I ratted him out. So I stayed silent. Now that I'm back here, all these years later, I stood outside our house in the dead of night with my cat and her recently defaced collar at my feet. And I wondered if the mysterious death of Mr. Jingles is still talked about, and if anyone ever thought of any leads. I wondered why it was so difficult to get in touch with Richie or Brady or their families. Maybe I would try to get in touch with Levi, but part of me doesn't want to see the man he grew up to be. A thick fog was creeping down the street. I watched as it grew, frothing up my driveway. I began to wonder if the reason why I couldn't get a hold of my friends was more simple and yet more outlandish than anything more feasible than moving away. The fog had reached my feet, and the cat meowed frightfully, and with a hiss ran somewhere behind the house. But here I stood, watching the wall of unnaturally decisive fog move towards and envelop me. I stood here, waiting for what I knew I had been due for some time. I know it wouldn't matter if I tried to run from it or not, because I'm here in this town, and the consequences of my part in a joke gone wrong are here to greet me. Through the thick fog, I can hear the distorted sound of an ice cream truck's song approaching, and through the fainted beat can be made out the cacophonous ringing, as if some pair of jingling bells attached to two slippered feet. Jingle, jingle, he's right behind you. We'd go out around one, climbing through bedroom windows. We'd try to land softly on bushes and backyard lawns. Some of us went barefoot. Some hid a spare pair of sneakers under porches or tucked under tarps used for covering patio furniture. Some of us just liked being barefoot. It made us feel as though we'd have the strength that comes from mimicking the uncivilized. Some of us would play the whole game with no shoes. No shoes, no shirts. One of us liked to play the game in only his boxer shorts. He would dare anyone to mention his near nakedness. I'm not gay for running around the woods in my underwear. You're all gay for looking at me in my underwear. This is teenage logic. Everything is a chess match where both players have only recently discovered how to play Monopoly. Board games were daytime affairs. We would play them by the above-ground pools and in basements while our parents were at work. We were old enough to be home alone, provided we memorized the phone numbers of all the retired neighbors who could, theoretically, get to us quickly in the event of an emergency. Practically speaking, 70-year-old Mrs. Hasher would not have been able to help any of us had a deranged murderer targeted us the way they did in the cable movies we weren't supposed to watch. But our parents told themselves stories the same way we did. Stories about safety. Stories about good neighborhoods. Stories about how much a locked door could accomplish. Years ago, a girl had been abducted from her home on our street. But the rumor was she opened the door when a stranger knocked. Our parents didn't say it, but they secretly believed that meant she deserved to be kidnapped. I mean, if your kid is dumb enough to open up the door for just anybody, they told themselves that we, their children, were smarter than that. Smarter than that girl. We were not smarter. We were, in fact, a lot dumber than her. Of course, we didn't know that. We thought we were geniuses. Genius, warrior, punks with wisdom and ferocity, and all before our 15th birthday. We believed people were jealous of us, but we didn't know who these people might be. We believed that everyone at school had gone to at least second base, and we were ashamed to have never seen a naked girl in real life. We laughed at the word condom, but we believed, given the opportunity, that we would be intrinsically fantastic at lovemaking. At school, we had posters in our locker of Sarah Michelle Gellar and Jennifer Love Hewitt, and those of us who had gone to first base had that one poster of Cameron Diaz that would have gotten us suspended if a teacher saw it. We'd gather at each other's lockers and discuss the arrangements for the game that night. We'd agree on a spot in the woods. Some of us liked meeting at the tree that had been split in half by lighting. Some liked the rock formation that resembled an old man kneeling with his head down. Once the location was agreed upon, we'd argue about the time. Some of us wanted to meet at midnight on the dot. We didn't realize that we were in love with the poetry of it, because we swore we hated poetry based on what our teachers had us read. Some wanted to do it later, much later. Some wanted to meet at 3 or 4 so that the game would last until dawn. Tomorrow's Saturday. We don't have school. What's the problem? The problem was that some of our parents got up around dawn. Some of our mothers would have a heart attack if they woke up and found our beds empty. Some of us didn't want to worry our parents. Some of our fathers used a belt if we misbehaved. Some of us cared about our parents too much to let them know what their children were up to at night. Some of us feared our parents more than we feared anything in the woods. Some of us feared nothing. Some of us loved the idea of being gone when our parents woke up, making them think that we'd escaped, that we were on a runway train somewhere, moving further and further away from them. Some of us liked the feeling of the belt on our skin because it solidified the hate we felt for the people we were meant to love the hardest. We'd usually meet a little after 1. If it was warm out, we'd meet by the lake where the summer camp used to be until it went out of business. The cabins were still there, and the picnic tables, and the signs that said mess hall and nurse's office. The paint on the signs was fading. Vines were growing over the cabin windows. We didn't explore the camp at night. Even the bravest among us weren't that fearless. We'd seen at least one horror movie that took place at a camp. And we didn't want to be chased by a man with a mask. We only wanted to play a game. In our game, if you followed the rules, you didn't get hurt. Nothing bad happened. If you broke the rules, the game was over for you. But that was it. No injuries, no harm. It was all about stamina, sustaining yourself throughout the night. There wasn't really any loss. There wasn't even a real way to win. Bragging rights were all we had to play for. And yet, they seemed more valuable than the $100 bills our fathers would leave out on the kitchen counter, as though tempting us to steal. Some of us did steal. Some of us felt the belt. Some of us liked it. But we'd never say who. We started by the lake, and we faced off against each other, eye to eye, with another boy standing a foot away from you. That was how it began. We would face each other, take a deep breath, and say, "He's right behind you." One of us would say it. The other would listen. Then, the other person would say it. "He's right behind you." And we would escalate the intensity. The rule was that you could not say anything other than those 4 words, but you could say them however you liked. We could shout them at each other. We could whisper them. Those of us who were more strategic knew that volume wasn't enough. It was about having an action, an objective. It was important to keep a verb in mind: beg, cajole, beseech, caution, plead, convince, convince, convince. He's right behind you. It didn't matter that we played this game several times a week for 2 years. It didn't matter that we knew that nobody was behind us. Inevitably, someone would get spooked. One of us would run home. That first hint of terror was contagious. Soon, more of us would be retreating back to our homes. It was rare that more than 3 or 4 of us would be left by the end of the night. If your partner ran away, you would find someone else who had also lost their partner. And you would face off against them, speaking the 4 words. If you were the only one without a partner, you stood silently and waited for someone to leave. Like most boys our age, we had no respect for anything we were meant to respect, and the utmost respect for imaginary things and made-up scenarios, school and church and authority and death were all laughable to us. But this game that we had created out of nothing, this was something to be taken seriously. None of us could remember who started it. Maybe an older boy who had since graduated from childishly sneaking out of his room at night. Maybe we all put it together like a story composed of hormones and dirty sweat. Maybe it didn't matter. All that mattered was keeping it alive for as long as we could. We never spoke of the game outside of planning it between classes at our lockers. We never talked about who was good at it or bad at it. We never talked about who stayed the longest or who left first. We just played. We played, and we never planned to stop playing. One night, one of us was staring at his partner when he saw the other boy's eyes look slightly to the left. This was against the rules. You only looked at your partner. You used the 4 words to scare them, if you could. You didn't involve physicality, not even a slight shift in focus. The other boy began to shake his head. This was wrong. This was against the rules. None of us knew what to do if someone broke the rules, because nobody had ever broken the rules. There were no referees, and even if there were, it wouldn't have mattered now, because there were only 2 boys left on that night. The other boy appeared to almost choke. He coughed out the words, "He's right behind you." The other boy looked as though he was going to raise an arm, raise a hand, point to something. Instead, he ran off. The other boy wasn't supposed to run off. You were supposed to wait until the other person said the 4 words. You were supposed to give them a chance to scare you back. One of us stood there that night, all alone, and felt an immense pride extending down his shoulders and off into the ground below his feet. He was the only one left. A laugh barked past his lips. It was a nervous laugh, but he didn't know where the nerves were coming from, and he wondered if he could get home before his father banged on his door to wake him up for school. If not, it would be the belt. But did that mean anything? He was the last one of us still standing there in the woods. "He's right behind me." He didn't know why he said it. It wasn't true. There was nobody behind him. Every sound was natural. Every presence an imagined one. Every instinct to flee was his paranoia trying to torment him now that all his fellow competitors were gone. He would stand in the woods for as long as he liked. He would enjoy this moment. Despite winning nothing, he would tell himself he was a winner. He was no longer one of us. He was someone else. He's right behind me, but the game was over. There was nobody left to scare. Blood rain. It wasn't the red aliens that were the problem. It was the voodoo high priests that caused all the mischief. Monkey hands, parrot beaks, and baboon skulls were one thing. But when the blood rains came, all of the usual cons kicked into high gear. The mantis-like, spindly red alien surveyed my vegetables with an air of fascination. He stopped on the okra, holding up a stalk and studying it. He was dressed in ripped whitewashed jeans and a Blink 182 t-shirt. But behind his disguise was a standard silver spandex jumpsuit, like they all wore when they came into town to creep around. Whatever else you could say about the red aliens, they were creepers by nature, with no sense of boundaries. I just wanted him to move along. I clenched a final notice of foreclosure auction in my hand, as if taking out my anger on the paper would save the family ranch. Yahya Gabon took the deed to our ranch in foreclosure. Yahya was a cattle herder, but before that, he had been a TAF general and still had pull with the government. Yahya was hard, implacable, unyielding, a real monster. Yahya once shot and killed a 6-year-old boy playing in his grazing pastures while the child begged for his life. The laws allowed one to protect their land from intruders. When asked why he'd done it, Yahya had said, "The signs on the perimeter say, 'Stay out, trespassers shot on sight.' Wouldn't mean nothing if I didn't follow through." The Police Nacional who had questioned him said, "Yahya, the kid was illiterate. Guess he should have paid more attention in school." Yahya had said. The way Yahya looked at it was, when he set his eye on what's yours, it was his if he could find a way to take it from you. Uncle Kofi was missing an eye from turning the other cheek in a fight as a boy. But the rock in the other kid's hand had landed just right and shot the eyeball clean out. Uncle Kofi was a pacifist who wouldn't even swat a mosquito. So this was no contest. I had told Uncle Kofi we should just give up the ranch. We couldn't afford it. But Uncle Kofi was superstitious. He believed that fate could be wooed. A few weeks earlier, I had gone with Uncle Kofi to the Ako Desawa fetish market and met with Guédenon Benoit, the voodoo man. We entered his office, as he called it, which was a hut with a square-framed doorway lined with human skulls that looked like a no-frills mine shaft leading into a catacomb. The standing air inside was stiff, musky, and moist. The walls of the inner chamber were filled with the dried heads of dogs, monkeys, birds, snakes, and every imaginable living thing you could think of. You could almost hear the animal sounds echo from the clay walls. Uncle Kofi gasped at the abundance of spirits filling this hovel. I did not share his sense of wonder. I joked to myself, internally, that this was the great roadkill emporium of Lomé. Here it is, Guédenon said, his rounded jowl stubbled with patches of white, and his bald head shining from the torchlight. The basket was filled with little dried chameleons, with their helmet-shaped heads adorned with horns and bony lumps, like modern-day dinosaurs. It smelled like furry jerky, dried in the humid, tropical breeze. Yes, here we are. After putting a handful of chameleons in a basket, Guédenon gathered a handful of dried parrots, each withered down to the size of a famished mouse. Now, to change your luck, you will grind up the chameleon and grind up the parrot. Guédenon depicted the grinding while he spoke, taking up a pewter bowl and mallet to make the demonstration, the torchlight reflecting off his bald forehead. You will mix this with soap and bathe yourself in it. Do this 2 times a day. 3 days, not a day more, not a day less. Uncle Kofi tapped Guédenon on the shoulder while he looked for some other nonsense to sell us. Did you hear about the Dulaba? You mean about the strangers whose minds could not be read? They were talking about these totems at the village gates by our farm that look like men sitting cross-legged, with arms extruded and heads of black tar, with seashells for eyes. The guardians, or Dulaba, are supposed to be able to scan the minds of foreigners entering the village to discern if they have ill intent. I heard that the Westerners, the lanky ones, who appeared before the blood rains, I heard that none of the priests could discern their purpose from the Duleba, Uncle Kofi said. It is true, Guédenon told him. I wanted to scream. They are red aliens, you moron. No one knows what they want. But I couldn't say anything, or I'd be committed. I was the only one who could see them ever since I was a child. I had been hiking on Mont Agu, exploring its ridges, when I saw a light in the mist and stumbled upon their cliffside observatory. Normally, it was cloaked, but something about the vapors in the mist had screwed with the effect, did something to the light. When I walked into what looked like a temple from the outside, I saw a screen wrapping around the length of the chamber in a semicircle. Large, spindly red, mantis-like creatures with 4 legs on their hind parts were engrossed in the readings and images on their screens, tapping away with long, bony fingers on the consoles in front of them. One of them turned its hooded eyes and triangular face in my direction and screamed, the pincers on the sides of its mouth flaring in fright. A group of them rushed toward me, I shielded my face. But they were not violent. That was when they gave me the scarab beetle amulet that allowed me to recognize them despite their cloaking tech, and explained to me about the bright blue marble we inhabit. They said, "It is not that Earth is special. There are plenty of habitable worlds with natural wonders. It is the size of the moon that counts. Our mission is to scan the cosmos to find other worlds that can host life. Other worlds with just the right size of moon." I had pressed the aliens as to why this was the case, and they had elaborated and explained everything in great detail. But I couldn't understand much of it. The only worlds that host life are those worlds with a moon that is just the right size to create a total solar eclipse, one of the red aliens said. And once that sacred syzygy goes out of balance, or is disrupted, life moves on. I had asked why they didn't just place moons around any planets with the right characteristics. He said, "There is a directive against playing God. Each civilization rises and falls on its own merits. When the time comes, a people either mature and venture out from their home, or are snuffed out." It sounded dramatic back then, but these days, I don't know that a fair judge would deem us worthy of salvation, least of all us Togolese, who were forever finding reasons to kill and brutalize one another. The red aliens come from a sad, timeless dimension, much like Togo. On their world, there are tiny microbes in the soil that cover everything in shades of red. The microbes are in the air, the soil, the water, and can lay dormant for centuries, which is what is causing the blood rains. So much of this stuff is filtered out of the observatory that when they are here, they are literally pumping red dye into the clouds, day in and day out. In Togo, the next calamity is always waiting right around the corner, and word travels fast in Lomé. To stir people into a panic only takes the smallest of rumors. Strange lights flashing around Mont Agu. Tall, spindly men in strange clothing loitering in the market. Match that up with omens like blood rain and a lunar eclipse, and the entire populace was stewing with anxiety and murmuring up a storm. Especially Uncle Coffee. It was great for the priests. But you know what terror and intrigue is bad for? Selling vegetables and fattening cows, and for all of the divination and soothsaying about how the bloodshed of decades gone by would be punished unless the land was purified. How those cries reaching to heaven would compel the Almighty to blot out the sun. Despite all of that, all this voodoo accomplished was to tear into old wounds and inspire fresh political violence. Everyone in the suburban villages and the slums blamed someone for their troubles and sought protection or aid from the priests. The radicals blamed the Union Party and the rich Kabyé tribe for subjugating the masses and censoring speech. For this and for that, and prayed for their downfall. The Union Party blamed the radicals for deceiving the public with lies and doubled down on censorship. And the disputes were much the same in the suburbs. Each side thought the other evil. Each side saw the issue as one-sided, good versus evil. In a way, each side was right, and each side was wrong. And our people, splintered in 1,000 factions, with no unifying principle, pointed fingers at each other, much the same as our governors did. And old feuds spilled out into bloodshed. And Yahya had sent a man to tell Uncle Kofi he'd be coming to the ranch the next day. And it was time we cleared out. I gripped the crumpled notice in a tight fist and looked up at the stranger, the red alien at my vegetable stall in the Lomé Grand Market, grabbed one of my best okra plants and gave it a once-over, not knowing I could see through his disguise. "How much for one of these?" he asked in French. "Why are you here?" "I am looking for vegetables to thicken a stew." "Cut the shit," I said. "We've been having blood rain for the past 2 months." The red alien laughed heartily. "It's just from dust kicked up into the atmosphere from a dust storm. For 2 months? Dust doesn't take 2 months to settle. Maybe it is some kind of algae, like a red tide. It stained all my white clothes. It burned the leaves off the trees. People are using it to tattoo skin." "What do you think it is?" "I know what it is. Red alien bugs. What else?" His buggy eyes bulged, and his forehead furrowed. Then he settled into realization. "You're her. You're Dora Igwe. Dora the Explorer. The one who found us, in the flesh. Do you want to come watch the eclipse with us?" "Why would I do that?" "It is an important celestial event. No disrespect. But it gets dark once a day. It's called night. I really don't get the novelty." "You wouldn't, would you?" "I guess it's like the suddenness of the enveloping darkness. It is metaphorical. Sometimes, you know, it is later than you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know, your people believe that war and bloodshed are like a virus, that it infects even the sun and the moon. And when the sun and moon get to quarreling, that brings about the eclipse, a final warning to change your ways." Those are just Batamaliba folk stories. They say the first mothers, Puka Puka and Kuyekok, told the villagers that the darkening of the sun was a warning to make amends for old feuds and live in peace, and the light will return. You are a spacefaring team of scientific explorers. You know this is an astrological, mathematical event. It has nothing to do with violence. Don't be so sure, child. There is much you do not understand. As the red alien turned and walked up the long, dusty road to the forest switchbacks, he turned and said, "Come watch with us, if you want." In the observatory, we waited for the eclipse. The red aliens were frantic. The one from earlier, who I'd nicknamed Tommy, took the controls, and lifted the ship to a hover. "We've got to find a better vantage point," he said, as the ship floated through the Tongolese countryside outside Lomé. I could feel the eerie shadow chasing us down. The sky was full of fast-moving clouds, and a low mist hung to the valley floor, slinking down the mountain slopes and resting on the fields. The ship came to rest in Yahya's grazing lands, and the moon obstructed the sun. The red aliens gasped with a sound like the whistling of the wind. Like I said, though, I'm not superstitious. The whole thing seemed a bit overblown to me, but there it was, the total eclipse. A black orb with the faintest halo of red, set against a black, overcast, and moonless sky. Tommy turned to another red alien, who I'd known for years, and had nicknamed Freddy, and said, "The satellite has started moving too close. It is only a matter of time now. Isn't everything?" Freddy asked. "Hey, what is he talking about?" I asked. "Don't you worry, child," Freddy said. "When the time has come, it will all happen very quickly. She doesn't know we are here for the moon," Tommy blurted out. "It is just the right size for the colony in HD 1106-7, Freddy said. Freddy made a gesture to shush him. But it was too late. I had heard it. So, for all our worries about our earthly disputes, this was what the end of the world looked like. At least I wouldn't end up being homeless. That had been the thought I'd been obsessing over for days. I went to look out the back window, and it was just like Freddy had said. It was coming quickly. Yahya was in the cab, rolling the excavator toward the ship, and the dipper and bucket were swinging down and about to crash through the ceiling. The sound was deafening. Shards of metal and other materials rained down. Wires and diodes and mechanical pieces pelted our heads and the ground. The red aliens shrieked. Tommy was holding Freddy like a kid in a theater, caught with an unexpected jump scare. I ran out in the fields, under the dark, moonless sky. Yahya raised the bucket over and over, caving in the roof of the ship and tearing huge chunks of the fuselage out into his fields. Yahya was smoking a Cuban cigar, and I could hear him yelling, "Serves you right, trespassers." I guess a similar thing would happen soon to our ranch house, in the family for 5 generations. Maybe the barn, too. That seemed to be the way of things, to tear down the old to make way for the new. Especially here in Togo, Tommy made it out of the ship, only to be met by the blast of a shotgun. "Got one!" Yahya shouted. I just watched, frozen. The blast tore Tommy's torso nearly in half, felling him. The blood poured and oozed out onto the dark fields. The pool of blood was red, just like ours. I guess, however different we are on the outside, maybe all living things bleed red. We are a thirsty bunch, the living hungering after that red nectar, to stir it, to shed it, to pool it, and collect it. Then Yahya turned to me and pointed the shotgun at my face. "Run," he said. "Get off my land." And I ran through the pitch-dark fields, in the cool of the eclipse, crying as I waited for a gunshot that never came. Yahya yelled after me, "Enjoy your home while you can. I'll be coming for it." And he laughed, a bellowing stomach laugh, an eerie, chortling, bone-chilling laugh. Inevitable, unquenchable, soulless. And as I ran, tripping on rocks, legs cut by tall grasses, I saw sirens in the night. At least 12 SUVs. The Gendarmerie Nationales, the National Guard. They were coming for Yahya, alerted by the gunshots and the carnage. A tall, friendly Fed with a pock-marked face jumped out of one of the vehicles and tried to grab me. "It's okay now. We've got this," he said. But I wrestled away from him. As I made it to the clearing and the dirt road, I dared a glance back at the haloed specter of the eclipse. I hoped Uncle Kofi would be back at the kitchen table, waiting for me with some vegetable soup, blissfully impervious to the warring entities ravaging our lands. The blood rains fell in a torrent, coating the dirt road in a river of blood. I guess not all monsters are created equal. Ours take life without reason or remorse, just because they can. A sliver of light emerged from the fading eclipse as I reached the drive to the ranch house, lighting my path, warming the shadows. Uncle Coffee was at the door, the smell of the fetish soap on his skin. "Our luck is changing," he said.